Now, with new details on the investigation to the death of actor Gene Hackman, including newly released video.
Federal agents thought they were handling a simple case when they entered the estate of Gene Hackman. However, they soon realized the property was a high-security installation with secrets buried deep underground.
As we're learning incredible new details this hour about the circumstances surrounding his death. His front door open, scattered pills on the bathroom countertop, one dog dead in the closet, two still alive on the property.
A hidden door in the library revealed a passage made of cold stone and metal. This was not a wine cellar or a storage room. It was a tunnel connected to things that were supposed to be forgotten by history. The deeper they went, the stranger it got, revealing a side of the famous actor that was hidden from the world. Echoes from Santa Fe. Breaking news has hit the world as we look at a video of one of the last times Oscar-winning Gene Hackman was seen in public. He was a known recluse in recent years, staying away from the cameras that once made him a star. Now, we have new details on the investigation into the estate of the famous actor, including a newly released video that the public was never supposed to see. As for the inside footage, the estate of the actor wants to block that release because they say it is a private matter. But the truth is starting to leak out. Inside Gene Hackman's secret tunnel, the environment is unlike anything you would expect in a normal home. The air is freezing and the walls seem to hold a heavy silence. Federal investigators had already found two people who had passed away in the mansion above.
A cloud of suspicion surrounds the deaths of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife, whose bodies were found in their Santa Fe home.
They had looked at a library that was messy and an open safe with nothing inside. They thought the worst part of their job was over. Then someone found the hidden passage behind the wall and everything changed for good. Nobody on that property, from the staff to the neighbors, had any idea this tunnel was there. That is the fact that changes how we look at everything else. Gene Hackman was one of the most celebrated actors in history, and he had built his entire life around keeping this secret buried in the ground. He almost succeeded in keeping it away from us forever. What investigators found at the bottom of those stone steps was never meant to reach the light of day, and what it reveals about who the man really was is just starting to come out. On February 26, 2025, at 11 in the morning, a group of federal vehicles pulled up to steel gates hidden deep in the forest outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. Behind those gates sat a $4 million compound. It was the private home of the 95-year-old actor and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, who was 65. Nobody had seen or heard from either of them in days. There were no phone calls, and no one was coming to work at the house. It was complete silence from a property that usually ran like a small military base. Here is the deal. A handyman was the one who finally called for help. He told the police that he believed the couple had passed away inside. The gates had to be forced open, and the locks were cut. That alone told the agents that something was deeply wrong. This was not a house where you just leave the front door open by mistake. Everything about this place was built to stay sealed unless someone on the inside wanted you to come in. When the officers entered, they expected to find something sad but normal. They thought it would be an elderly couple who passed quietly in their sleep, and what they walked into was anything but routine. Gene Hackman and his wife were found alongside their dog. Authorities later said that Betsy had died about a week before Gene. Her cause of death was a severe viral infection. His was heart failure. On paper, it looked like a closed case. But the scene in the house did not match the paperwork at all. So, here is the deal. The local sheriff told the public there were no signs of foul play. They wanted the story to go away, but they also admitted the scene was suspicious enough to need a full search of the entire property. No foul play, but suspicious enough to bring in federal teams with thermal cameras. Those two things do not make sense together, and the timeline raises questions that nobody has answered yet. Betsy died a full week before her husband. That means a 95-year-old man was alive in that house with his wife for 7 days. He made no call for help. He made no attempt to reach anyone. What keeps a man silent for 7 days in a house with a person he loves? It could be fear or duty. Or maybe it was the knowledge that calling for help would mean letting strangers inside, and strangers would find what was underneath. Before this story goes any further, you have to understand that if even half of this is true, it is one of the most disturbing things ever found in a celebrity home. Something bigger was hiding in the shadows of the mansion. Walls that talk. To understand what the investigators found underground, you have to look at what was sitting on top of it. The estate was not just a home. It was an installation. There was dense forest on every side and huge stone walls all around the edge. There were sensors and cameras everywhere that could see in the dark. It looked like a government site. The staff was all handpicked, and they had to sign legal papers that said they would never talk about what happened inside. Think about that for a second. There were decades of workers like gardeners and housekeepers, and not one of them ever told a secret. In a world with social media, that kind of silence is hard to find. It was forced silence. Building records for the house were mostly hidden from the public. One researcher spent months trying to find out how the house was built, and then she just stopped. She stopped answering her phone and never finished her work. No one knows what she found or who told her to quit looking. Here is what nobody was ready for when they finally went past the gates. The inside of the house was amazing. There were hallways full of famous paintings and furniture that were hundreds of years old. There were gardens with plants so rare that they only grow in a few places on Earth. A woman named Dr. Elena Vasquez is a history expert who looked at the house later. When she saw the layout, she got very quiet. She said she had seen many houses in the area, but this one was built like a museum inside a military base. The house was beautiful, but it was also built like a fort. That does not happen unless someone is trying to protect something very specific. She was right about that. Video from the police shows the officers walking into the house. The silence was very heavy. But what bothered the agents was not the quiet. It was the evidence that someone had been very busy before they got there. Furniture had been dragged across the floors. Books were pulled off the shelves and put back the wrong way. Drawers were left open, and a safe was empty. Someone had been looking for something or trying to hide it before the police arrived. And then the agents walked into the library. This is the part where things get very strange. They found a secret spot behind a wall in the library. It was hidden so well that you could stand in that room for 1,000 years and never see it. It was a high-tech entry point that needed a special way to open it. Whoever built it wanted it to be invisible. Behind the wall was a narrow path. There were stone steps going down into total darkness. There were no lights and no fresh air. It was just carved stone going straight down into the ground. The agents went down the stairs, and the air got colder with every step. The air felt thick and damp, and it tasted like metal. Water was on the walls. Their flashlights hit the stone, and they saw markings that made them stop. The walls were covered in deep carvings. These were not just drawings. They were precise and made with tools. Some looked like old science symbols. Others looked like blueprints for machines that should not have existed when the tunnel was built. One section of the wall had a drawing for a machine with gears and tubes that looked like engineering from another world. The way it was built told a story of its own. Near the top, the stone looked modern. It had clean cuts and concrete. But the deeper they went, the older it looked. There were marks from hand tools like picks and chisels. A man named Marcus Devlin is an engineer who looked at photos of the inside. He said the tunnel was not built by the person who owned the house. He said the top part was fixed up and made stronger, but the center of the tunnel was already there. He believed the actor moved into the house and found the tunnel already waiting for him. He inherited the secret. Nobody knew that the library held a secret that would change history. Hidden underground. When the agents finally reached the bottom, they found a huge room that felt like it was frozen in time. There were old wooden boxes stacked against the walls. Some of them had broken over the years and their contents were all over the floor. There were yellow papers and rusty metal objects. There were things that did not look like they belonged to any time we know about. One agent opened a box and found old photos that were falling apart. There were faces no one knew, wearing clothes from 100 years ago. Some photos showed secret meetings in rooms with no windows. Other photos showed buildings and underground spaces that are not on any record. In one picture, a group of men stood around a table with maps. There was a single light bulb over them that made their faces look dark. On the back of the photo, someone wrote the date 1937. There was also a word in a language that no one has been able to identify yet. There were also files bound in leather sitting next to the photos. They had codes and dates and names that were crossed out. Some pages described events that had been erased from history books. Some of the pages had been burned a little bit. It looked like someone tried to destroy the evidence, but stopped for some reason. The amount of stuff down there was huge. Agents thought it would take years to look through everything in that room. The floor was not just flat stone. It had circular patterns carved into it. These designs looked like maps of the stars. They were star charts made by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. They were not just for decoration. These patterns matched up with the stars and planets in a very specific way. They needed advanced math to be made. Whoever carved them was not just guessing. They were mapping something or leaving a message for someone who would come later and know how to read it. Here is the part that nobody noticed until later. The tools found in the boxes were also very strange. They had markings that did not match any company or time period. The way they were made was so perfect that it would need technology that did not exist back then. One object was a small metal tube with rings that moved inside. It had no seams and looked like it was made as one single piece. Even today, it is hard to make something like that. A man named Dr. James Whitfield worked for the federal government for 19 years. He looked at the details of this case, and his voice got very quiet. He said that when the government gets this quiet, this fast, it usually means they found something so big that they do not want to talk about it. He said it does not look like they are embarrassed. It looks like they are hiding something important. The land around the estate is not just desert and art. It is near Los Alamos, which is where the atomic bomb was made. People have talked about secret bunkers in the area for a long time. Records show that there was a lot of underground building during the Cold War. But how much was built is still a secret. A man named Richard Payne worked on these sites in the 1990s. He said there are systems under the ground that were built to last longer than the world on the surface. Some were closed, and some were just forgotten. Here is the detail that changes everything. The steel in that tunnel was the kind they used for the military. The way it was built matched high-security sites from the 1950s. You do not build a wine cellar like a bank vault. You do not seal a storage room from the inside. But a forgotten part of a secret government network makes sense. Everything led to a door that was never supposed to be opened. Shadows of Santa Fe. The neighbors always felt that something was not right with the property. A woman named Margaret Calloway lived next door for 22 years. She still talks about the noises she heard in the middle of the night. There were low vibrations at 2 or 3 in the morning that would wake her up. It did not sound like a heater or a plumbing issue. It sounded like something big and industrial moving deep in the ground. She said she could feel it in her ribs, and it made the water in her glass shake. She told the actor about it once during a rare talk over the property line. He gave her a look that she still remembers today. It was a look of warning. He told her that some things are better left under the surface. She laughed it off then, thinking he was just being a private guy. She is not laughing now. Another neighbor named Frank was a professional geologist. He also heard the vibrations and decided to do his own research. He set up a portable machine to measure the Earth's movement for a few weeks. The readings did not look natural at all. They were rhythmic and mechanical, almost like a massive elevator or a heavy machine running on a strict schedule. He told the county about the noise in 2019, but no one ever helped him. It was as if the paperwork just vanished into thin air. Others in the area remember seeing trucks with no markings arriving after the sun went down. These trucks would leave before dawn. The drivers always hid their faces, and there were no logos on the trucks. People who worked as staff at the estate would just disappear too, or their phones would be disconnected, and their social media was erased. It was like they never existed. One woman who worked there a long time ago told a friend she had seen things she was not supposed to see. She did not say what they were, but she was terrified. She was gone within a month, and no one has heard from her since. And get this, when they were fixing the house and found the tunnel, they found a second communication system in the walls. It was not a phone line or the internet. It was a closed system that went from the main house straight to the room underground. The wires were very old, but they still worked perfectly. Someone had kept that line alive for years. They were talking to whatever was down there on a channel that no one could listen to. It was a ghost line in a house that already had the best security. Who was on the other side of that line? Some people think it was a link to a hidden government base. Others have wilder theories about things that are not from this world. The crazy part is that New Mexico is full of stories like this. Some people think the estate was built over a pre-existing tunnel from the Cold War. There are rumors that the government built a massive network of paths under the desert that connect to sites like Los Alamos. If that is true, then the actor was not just living in a house. He was living on top of a secret that the military wanted to keep hidden. But here is the catch. Why would they let a celebrity live there? Maybe he was a part of it. Maybe he was the only person they trusted to keep the secret. Think about how many people would try to find a secret base. But no one would look under the home of a famous movie star. It is the perfect hiding spot. There are still many rumors in the air, but what many can confirm is that the vibrations stopped the night the couple passed away. For 22 years, that hum was a part of life for the neighbors. Now the silence is even scarier than the noise. It makes you wonder if the machine was turned off or if it finally reached where it was going. Hands down, this is one of the most overlooked aspects of the case. Everyone is obsessed with the actor, but no one is looking at the ground beneath him. What most people do not realize is that the ground in that area is full of caves. But these caves were modified with steel and concrete. It was not nature that made those rhythmic sounds. It was an engine. Could the actor have been protecting us from what lived below? Mystery behind the welded steel. People often forget who Gene Hackman was before he hid away from the world. He was a very warm person in his movies and in real life. His barber in town said he would come in every few weeks and talk about books and the weather. He was nice to everyone and remembered their names. He was not a man who seemed like he wanted to be alone in a fortress. People do not lock themselves away from a world they like unless they have to. The cameras and the walls were not there because he was just a strange guy who wanted peace and quiet. He built them because something under his house made him do it. In his movies, he often played men who knew too many secrets. Maybe that was never just acting for him. Maybe he was playing himself the whole time. The official story says he died of a heart problem at 95. That is very possible for a man his age. But it does not explain why a couple with millions of dollars would stay all alone in their final days. They did not call a doctor or reach out to any family. The cameras inside the house were turned off by hand before they passed. There were 2 people alone in a fort, dying in silence, while something 40 feet below them waited. There is one detail that bothers everyone who knows about this case. The tunnel door in the library was not closed when the agents found it. The lock had been moved recently. A man in his 90s had gone down into that cold, dark place right before he died. Why would he do that? What was he checking on? Or was he hiding from something he knew had finally found him? Deep in the back of that underground room, the agents found something else that made their blood run cold. Their lights hit an iron door set into the rock. It had no handle and no hinges on the outside. It was a thick steel surface with marks from a welding tool along every single edge. It was sealed from the inside by someone who never came back out. The lock was not made to keep people out of the room. It was made to keep something inside that chamber. The government has said absolutely nothing about what is behind that door. In a time when everything leaks to the internet, this level of silence is very rare. It means the information is being stopped on purpose by people at the very top. This silence tells us more than a speech ever could. Teams are still down there right now looking at everything. They are looking at DNA and trying to read the carvings on the stone. They are looking at the star maps on the floor that match constellations from thousands of years ago. Months have passed, and nothing has leaked. That means whatever is down there is still dangerous to the public. Someone decided that the things in that room are a threat to everything we know about history. Basically, they are treating the basement of a movie star like a crash site. One theory is that the door leads to a vault containing technology that was found in the desert in the late 1930s. If that is true, the actor was the final guardian of a secret that could change the world. So, here is the deal. We might never know the full truth about the secret tunnel. The FBI is not going to hold a press conference to tell us what is behind a welded door. But we can look at the facts. We have a 95-year-old man who spent his last moments in a dark hole in the ground. We have a house that was built to be a prison and a fort. And we have a government that is acting like it found a bomb. What most people are not seeing is that the actor chose this. He chose to live with the weight of that secret for decades. He gave up his fame and his public life to sit on top of that mountain and watch the cameras. He carried that secret until the very end. Now he is gone, and the secret is not his to protect anymore. The question is no longer about what he did. The question is about what happens now that the door is in the hands of the government. Are we ready to know what he was so afraid of? Many are not seeing the truth here because they are too distracted by the celebrity name. But the name is just a cover for what is really going on. Beneath the big houses and the quiet towns, there are doors that were never meant to be opened. And once you open them, you can never go back to the way things were before. The question is not if the government knows what is down there. They definitely do. The question is what could be so scary that they would rather stay silent than tell us the truth. Was the actor the last guard of something buried long ago? Or was he its final prisoner? What do you think is behind that iron door? Do you believe these secrets should stay hidden? Or is it time for the truth to come out? Leave a comment with your theory, and make sure to like and subscribe for more mysteries.